Good afternoon, and thank you for joining us. On behalf of the Hampshire Township Historical Society, I'd like to welcome you today. It is Tuesday, September 16th, 2025. We're here interviewing Steve and Linda Gustafson as part of our senior interviews, where we've been compiling interviews and covering historical facts about Hampshire and life in Hampshire in the past. So welcome and thank you for joining us. With that, I'd like to start by introducing our guests, Steve and Linda. Steve, if you'd like to start out, maybe born and raised, and tell us a little bit about your family history, the family business.
Yeah. Born and raised in Hampshire. Grew up most of my life on Mill Street, right across from the old milk plant. You know, I could hear the trucks banging around all the time and the milk deliveries, then the trains going through all the time. But the family business, we haul fuel, diesel, gasoline, and fuel oil. And my grandfather started hauling fuel with a Model T with a tank on the back. And first he started driving to Sycamore to have to get fuel before he got our own bulk plant and all that. And he had a 5-gallon measuring bucket. They would fill the bucket up, and he'd climb a ladder and he'd dump it in the tank, come down, and he'd move slide a little washer over and go on to the next one and stuff. And they kept going, and throughout the years we had it. Then my grandfather acquired a gas station right downtown. It was a mobile. He was Standard Oil to start with because that's all you could get. There was a Coney vacuum come in. That was the mobile to start. And he was one of the original distributors in this area of the mobile. So that's how we got going and grew up doing that. Started hauling fuel when I was 16. Hauled for 51 years out of Mill Street under 4 different companies, doing the same job, but just different company. One bought us out, and another one bought us out, and Peterson's bought us out. Then Elbert Co-op bought their fuel business. Then CHS, it was a Fortune 100 company, bought out the co-op business, the fuel business, or bought out their business. And that's when I went from a name to a number. But just through all the years, just kept going, and saw a lot of people we delivered to, like families, the fathers that we delivered to their kids, when they grew up and stuff, and delivered to a lot of the heating oil to a lot of the farms and houses around. Met a lot of dogs. So
I bet.
Yeah.
Tell us about your early years, when you were born, where you went to school, and when you graduated.
Well, I lived my whole life here in town. My family goes back to the 1800s with my father and grandfather and stuff, but I graduated from Hampshire High, and my dad graduated Hampshire High in 1939. I graduated in 1969, and my son graduated in 1999. But he's got 5 kids, but I don't think he worked it out so he has one coming up, in 30 years.
Right.
Just grew up there, and I had a sister, Linda, and she was an older sister. So we grew up, and I started pumping gas, at the gas station when I was 12 years old. And doing that, I started washing cars. On Saturdays, I washed cars, $2 a car. In the gas station there one day. And between my junior and senior in high school, I bought a new car. Went down to Ingle Ford there and got a new Ford Torino, 390 with a 4-speed and stuff.
What year was it?
1968.
68 Ford Torino.
Yep, first year they come out, yeah. Roared around town a little bit with that. Had a lot of fun. But we just grew up, and like I say, I was pumping gas when I was 12 years old and stuff. And, back then, that's when you wash the windshield, change the oil, or check the oil, change it and all that, air the tires. First of the year, you always put new license plates on. So people would come in, first of the year, it could be really cold out. Hey, can you throw these plates on too, and you're out there in the cold, and back then it was just metal nuts and bolts, so they were rusted and everything else. You're trying to get them off and on, put new plates on and stuff. Then right next to our station was back then, Hampshire tap, Bob Ross from it. And I had people pull in, get gas, do all that, give me a change, and they'd give me $1.25, $1.50, whatever it was, and tell me to go get them. I'd have to run over to the bar, get a 6-pack, and have to tell Bob who it was through, and they'd throw in a bag, and I'd run back out, hand it to the guy, because they didn't want to go in the tavern themselves and stuff. But, that's just the way things were then,
Where was the tap located in relation to the gas station?
Right next door, it's where the Hampshire Soldier lives now.
Okay, and who operated that tavern?
Bob Ross at that time.
Okay.
I have a picture someplace with he's still got a sign out there and stuff. But another thing, Hampshire was dry on Sundays. So at the gas station, we were open from 8 to noon on Sunday mornings, just for gas and stuff. And a lot of the old timers would come in and just sit around. And in winter or in summer we had some benches out front, and they'd sit in the benches. Or in the winter, we had cases of antifreeze stacked up out front, and all the old guys would come in and sit in the antifreeze and stuff. But they all, they get up, wanted a beer or something. They'd get on the phone at the gas station, call over to the tavern, and Bob would come around. He'd come out his back door, and we had a back side window there at the gas station. They'd open it, he'd hand it through, and they'd give them their $1.25. They could have got it on a Saturday night, but I think it was just coming down and buying it on a Sunday morning and all that.
Is the side window still there?
Yeah.
And it's outside on the north side?
Well, it's on the south side of where the shop is.
Got it. Did the gas station sell cigarettes at that time too?
We never sold cigarettes.
No cigarettes, okay.
We didn't sell candy or anything. We just sold oil products and, petroleum products and stuff that you'd use for your car.
When you were younger, did the station perform mechanical repairs, and if so, how extensive?
Yeah, we done the oil changes. First there was the shop right to the west of us. Then when in the late 50s, my dad built the shop where it is now, out where it faces State Street and that, because that was all just a grassy area then. And back when they had the Great Fire, that's what stopped it from going to the gas station, because that was an opening there.
Interesting.
Because it burned the west side of town, but it didn't go to the gas station part because it was an opening there. So.
And that's where the service bays are now located.
The service bays are now located, yeah.
Did you ever turn wrench in the station for your?
I done oil changes and stuff like that, and fixing tires, and the farmers would bring in a tire, and you'd have to fix that, Run the old tire machines, change oil, and
Interesting.
in the winter the cars would be all frozen with ice, and you're working on them, and the water starts dripping off from the ice, and a big clog of snow would fall off on you.
Good memories.
Oh yeah, it was good because all the old timers sat through there all the time, and you got all the old timers, would talk back and forth, so you know who everybody was,
Sure.
who done what. And one guy was watching for the other guy and stuff like that. But it was good as a kid growing up. It was good memories.
Who are some of the longtime employees that your father employed that you recall that would either work there or come in a lot?
Hank Tepman was there. He worked there for mechanic as long as I can remember and stuff. Then Ted, his son Ted and I went to school together, and we both worked there, when we were in school and stuff. And it's just, guys coming and going, and like Wayne Tepman, he'd pump gas at nights and stuff, and Terry Hinkle would come in and pump gas, and at night from like 5 to 7 or 5 to 8. And you'd lock up for the night.
What were the typical hours during the week of the station?
Sometimes it opened 7, but other times we opened at 6. Then we'd, and Hank would go home, usually the mechanic would go home about 4, sometimes 5. And we'd be just open for pumping gas and stuff from like 5 to 7 or 5 to 8.
Full day on Saturdays, or was that
Saturday,
a half day?
We were open 6 or 7 till like 3 in the afternoon.
So tell us how you met your wife, Linda.
We were at the VFW, had a good times all the time at the VFW. There's either dances, receptions, and stuff going on all the time. And we were down there, and my nickname was Gus from being Gustafson. And I was out there, and her and her sister were there. I never really met them before, but her sister's nickname was Gus. And Oris Ruth was by the bar, and we were at the reception. She turned around, Gus, you want a drink? And I said, both me and her sister said, yes. He turned around, then we got talking and met, and things from then on, we started going together and that. But that's how we met, was down the VFW with Oris saying, Gus, you want a drink?
It all started with a drink.
Yep. And the VFW, I mean, all the people's been around. They miss that so much now because reception is still there, and there's always dances going on.
For those of you that might not know, the VFW hall was located where the current Getz's Auto Repair shop is. It was a long-time institution in the village, hosting weddings and parties and dances and high school reunions. It was quite the destination in its day.
Back when it started, it was an army barracks originally. It had a basement underneath it, and the army barracks was like where you had the food and stuff, and down in the basement was the bar. Then they built the dance hall on next to it, but the bar was still in the basement. Then the next step after that, they built a bar on like it was,
Interesting.
But it started out as an army barracks.
I do recall the building that was wood and it went off perpendicular to the hall.
That was the army barracks that they got.
Interesting.
Yeah, and that was the original VFW.
Did you serve in the military?
No, I went through the physical and stuff. Back then when I was going, we'll start up, when I was 18, you had to go register for the draft. We had to go register at the funeral home. And I always thought that was a little different when you registered for Army at the Fredericks Funeral Home.
Interesting.
Then they had the draft, and there was a lottery system. Once a year, they went from 1 through 365, and it was a national deal. They pulled out dates. And I was like 180 or something like that, or 180 something, but I had to go in for the physical, but they quit drafting about 15 numbers before they got to me. But I knew some guys that got picked number 3 or something like that. They just went and joined to get what they wanted. But everybody would look at that, that night was a big thing, watching that draft thing.
Of course.
But I knew, some of the guys that won in and that. And, met a few hauled back and forth to the O'Hare, when they're coming home or coming through, flying through, we'd stop to see them and stuff.
What memories of your childhood could you share with us from either elementary or high school?
Well, we were kids growing up, we just rode our bikes all over in the summer and all that. We just rode our bikes. We'd play baseball, just to get a bunch of kids. We'd go play baseball. We'd go and, maybe once a week or once every other week, we'd all pack at lunch. We'd ride our bikes out to the Forest Reserve. That just got open, the original piece of the Forest Reserve. Oh, Hap Dry Miller, was the ranger out there then, when he had that job. We'd ride out there and have lunch. We'd ride our bikes around in the trails, and he was always glad to see us, somebody to talk to and stuff, and we'd help move stuff down there. But it was a good time, play baseball and all that. And also rode shotgun with my dad in the field truck. As a kid, just rode with him all the time. And he, being on the fire department, the old whistle would go off, and sometimes we'd go and he'd pull it village hall, you'd go and jump in the fire truck, and he took me as a kid, throw me in on number 3, that was her pumper, and I just a little kid standing up in the front seat, with him and another guy driving the fire truck and a couple guys on back, and thought that was pretty neat. I have a few memories of that, and grew up helping with that.
The fire station and the engines were originally located in the village hall. Where
yes.
Currently there's the clerk's office.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
I've seen some of the historic photos.
Yeah, we had 4 pieces of equipment in there, a couple old engines. The old Model A. I got a picture someplace, I don't have it with me now, where where the fire station is now. It wasn't there then, but was the Methodist church, and they had a fire there. And the old Model A was hooked to the hydrant there, and it was pumping, and the guys were up putting a fire out in that church up in the thing. And the old number 2 was sitting there, and Burlington had a fire. Burlington come over too, and they had their old 1937 fire engine there.
The original Methodist church, that's located across from the current post office, is
Yes.
it not?
Mm-hmm.
And what year do you figure that was that they had a fire there?
I'm guessing the early 40s. I'm not sure, but I think it was in the 40s there.
Okay.
Because it was just the Model A, and they had the old number 2 engine was a 1939 Ford. And Burlington had a 1937, I think, or something like that for a fire engine. My grandfather was the first fire chief and all that. And my dad, he was on for over 60 years.
And how many years were you on the fire?
I put 40 on as active fire, and now I'm a trustee on the department. Still staying involved and stuff.
Sure. We appreciate your service. Correct me if I'm wrong, would you be willing to share with us some of your family history and where the primary fire station is currently located next to the post office?
Yes.
I was under the impression your family had some significant impact on the land acquisition and or the building,
Yeah.
or both.
Well, he knew who owned it. George Heiston owned them lots. He was the implement dealer. Where the library is now, that was an implement store. And my dad knew he had it, talked him into, selling to the fire department when they got to be in a district. It was in 1961, so they had to buy their own get their own fire station. Well, they didn't have no money back then. So my dad put up the money to build the original station. I forget, it was 20,000, 28,000 stuff. Remember him telling Mom he was going to do that one day, But that's the way, he just does things that way. And they got it, as they got the tax money, and over a few years they paid him back and stuff. But he got it going and that. And I remember as firemen done as much work as they could, and themselves. And I was there as a kid, 10 years old or so. And I remember I got this. They put the gravel down before they cemented the floor, and I got to take the hose and wet it up, little fire hose, and wet it all down so it could compact it and stuff, and drag the stuff around when I was a kid, helping build it. No, but I wish I would have took pictures. I took all sorts of pictures of the new fire station, but you didn't have no pictures of building it. Nobody thought to take the pictures back then.
Your father then, it was your father that was involved in coordinating the land acquisition,
Yeah.
but also in helping finance
the
the construction of.
Yes.
That's pretty impressive,
Yeah.
to have the foresight and the involvement to do that.
Well, that's the way they done things, And it was everybody, if you didn't, you got whatever you could, and built.
There's a bronze plaque commemorating your father on the front of that fire station, is it not?
Yeah, they put it there when they remodeled the station there, and that dedicated the station to him.
How fitting.
Yeah.
So tell us about your family, kids and grandkids, and
Oh, we, grew up here, then we got married. We got married right on the centennial, 1976, July 24th. It was when they had the 100th anniversary. They had the big doings going on at the football field and stuff. And we got married that night in a Lutheran church on Twilliger Street. And we had a little limo dropping the girls off and stuff. And unbeknownst to us, after we come out from the wedding, they had horse and buggies waiting there for us. So we rode around town on horse and buggies, us and the wedding party. Alan Piskey had it, in a couple of horses and a buggy, and Mize Allen had some nice horses and buggies back then, and they took us around town and stuff. And then we had our reception down at the VFW. So then we got married. We had 2 kids, daughter Lori, then son Rich, and then they grew up and both all through Hampshire High School and that. And get married. My daughter Lori married Fred Marwick there, called Buzz. And they had a boy and a girl. And then my son Rich got married. And he's got 5 kids. Got married to Maggie Heine, but it wasn't a Hampshire Heine, an Algonquin Heine.
Clarification.
Yeah, clarification, yeah. But they had 5 kids.
Did any of your 2 kids follow your footsteps in either emergency response or fire department?
Yes, my son did. He started out in Hampshire, was paid on call and stuff, but he wanted to end up full-time in Bartlett, and he's a battalion chief in Bartlett as of now. And his son, Ben, graduated this last year from high school, and right now he's in EMT school over at Sycamore. He wants to get in the fire service, and that EMT school, then he's going to a firefighter school. And if he starts out at Hampshire, even at part-time, he'll be the 5th generation at Hampshire.
Neat.
Would be the 5th generation in service.
That's fantastic.
But I remember my dad telling me stories when my grandpa was chief, and he'd driving the Model A. They took it. When they first got the Model A, they went to Burlington and all over, because that was one of the first fire trucks around. And he was living at home, so my grandpa had a fire phone, in the house, so he'd get the call and they'd start the phone tree to get guys, but a lot of times my dad went along because my grandpa got him out of bed and we got to get going, And we started out with, I'd go on, the old responded from home with the whistle, then we got electrons and pagers and stuff. And went on from there, and just
Hampshire
it's changed a lot through the years.
I can see that. Hampshire still has the Model A, does it not?
Yes, we still kept the Model A.
And
we had it refurbished and stuff.
And you run it in parades in the area,
Yeah.
still to this day.
It'll still run it, it'll still pump water. Took it to one of these little fire musters a few years back, and it got the trophy for coming the longest way, and it got the trophy for getting water the quickest. We was out the Griebel's pit, and started drafting water, and that pump drafted quicker than the other engines did that were out there.
Don't make them like they used to.
No,
So tell us, you lived in Hampshire. What was it like to raise your family here?
oh, it's nice, still knew everybody. When I grew up, everybody lived next to each other. All of them, were in World War II, the Korean War, and the kids knew each other. And when our kids grew up, they had the same thing. They knew most all the kids in town. And, it was all local stuff. Schools were still small back then. Like when I went to school, there was, 30, I think when we had to graduate, there was like 50 some kids in our class, which was the biggest class back then. And 90% of them, we started out in kindergarten together and graduated together, and stuff like that. And a third of our class is gone already.
Wow.
But my son and all them, they had the kids, but now my grandkids, they go out to Hampshire, but there's 2,000 kids out there now, and they got their own group of friends, and they don't, you don't know all the kids like you used to. But everybody knew everybody back then, and the parents. Everybody knew, if you were riding around town, they knew who you were. Or if you're sliding around, roaring around town in your car, they knew who you were.
Had a way of making its way back to your parents sometimes too, didn't it?
Yeah. Hey, your kid, I seen your kid, But remember the old Hampshire Village Hall, behind the Village Hall, they had 2 jail cells back in there. I never was in it, but I knew they used them once in a while, to put some in till Dad got there or somebody got there, to get them out. But that was the old clinker back then.
The village still has one of the cell doors,
Yeah.
and for the sesquicentennial next summer, they're planning to recreate the jail like they did in 1976, and they're going to build a jail and hang that door on it.
Yeah.
Some things don't change.
I remember once they put a guy who in the jail, because he was messing around, he threw him in jail, and he was mad about it, so he lit the mattress on fire. So they had the fire department there with the hose putting the fire out and stuff.
That's funny.
Back then, you tell, now you shouldn't do that, so. Oh yeah, but the kids grew up, and we just had a nice time.
Tell us about the social life in Hampshire, going out to dinner, or what restaurants would you frequent, or what did you do for entertainment as a couple when you and Linda would go out?
Well, a lot of times we'd go out. A lot of times if something going on at the VFW on a Saturday night, you go down there, is there receptions or dances, or back then, we could go out to eat. There's a little Bohemia, we'd go there sometimes. Or else you go to the Blue Moon. Even before I got married, go to the Blue Moon on a Saturday night. Besides the big hall, they had a bar, and they always had some music in there on the road, and people would go in the, Blue Moon there. And back in the 50s, I talked to you like Eddie Hennig, Hank Gehringer. They would all go down to Blue Moon when they were younger. Stuff, or else you just meet friends at a, local pub or something like that. When we got married, I couldn't believe that anybody would stay home on a Saturday night. But then if we got older now, you got to go someplace. Like, oh, do we really got to go? We're going to be home by 9?
How things change.
Oh, yeah.
That's funny.
Yeah.
Tell us about some of the significant changes in the village that you've noticed over the years from when you grew up.
Oh, just the town growing, and the water lines and the sewer lines got better, and they kept building on, and some of the always expanding a little in the village, but never a whole lot until the last 10 years or so. But it was slow growth and that. But I remember when they had the cattle yards still in town off of Keys Avenue there, get up to the end. There was the old toy factory where it was now, and there was some cattle. Stan Burnage had cattle yards up in there. And they got, took out and buildings went in there and stuff. And just went around. When we were kids, it was a chicken dip, when we were in high school and stuff. Or after we got to high school, the old chicken dip. And uptown, next to Fenzel's and all that, back then it was the Pizza Bush. They had pizza there. It was the first time they had like a pizza parlor and the soda fountains and all that. And we were going in. That's where everybody met and hang out, when you were kids and stuff. And that was the place to go. Or otherwise, we circled around town. We pull in the chicken dip, spin around and go back and circle around town. Or else we'd go to Elgin and just circle the blocks down there, Here to that movie American Graffiti. I could almost name people to them characters the way it was, and where they was riding around towns, and it's just like we done in Elgin and stuff. Then they had the movie theaters there, the Crocker and all them 2 movie theaters. And when I grew up, then Genoa had a little movie theater when I was a kid. My dad took me to and stuff. But go there, then when we got able to drive, it was the 2 Starview and the Dundale, the old drive-in theaters. Load a bunch of people up and go to the drive-in. Might have a few beers, or we always just went as a bunch of groups. And like on a Sunday night, a bunch of guys or gals, might not even been, dates, or just everybody got together, and we'd go to Elgin, go to a movie, and go like to Lazar's Pizza or something afterwards, and just everybody got together.
A lot of familiar names.
Yeah. But it was good times.
Tell us what words of wisdom or guidance would you have for us at this time in your life?
Oh, for the kids, get serious, maybe a little sooner than I did. And find out what you want, because you got to make something of your life to go nowadays. You just can't bum around. Get in a profession or something. You find yourself a profession to get in. And where they'll, if something happens, you can move on to another one. Because when you were younger, if you got a job with a big company, you were set for life, almost. But now my wife, she started out at Western Electric, was AT&T, and the day after they passed the NAFTA law, they said they were moving to Mexico. Then she got a job at Motorola in Harvard when they started that, because she was working with phones and stuff, so she was one of the first 12 hired at that plant. And well, that they didn't even get the plant half going, and they shut that down and went to China. And she got another job with a company that made the push-button transmission stuff, Allison Transmission. Well, she was there for a while, then all of a sudden, they moved all the older ones to one line, you know. And right after that, they shut down that line and fired everybody, or laid off everybody that was working and brought in temps to take their place. And it's just the way it is nowadays, so you gotta have, you know, have a plan what you're gonna do and have a backup plan. But
Good advice. Is there anything you'd like to add that comes to mind? Do you want to share any of the materials that you brought with today, or tell us a little bit about them?
well, in my folder here, my cousin, K. Irving, he started out and he went to Europe and come back, and they have a family tree here from the 1800s from the Gustafson family from the 1860s. They come over from Sweden, and they got their life histories of all the families on down. And they got pictures and old pictures and all this stuff. I'll bring it along when in January, Gustafson and Worthwines are putting family on at the historical meeting in January.
Great.
So I'll bring a lot of this stuff down there, and if anybody wants to look through it, you know, but you know, and I had many good friends through the years and stuff, and some of the guys I knew, you know, from we were kids, you know, still know very good, you know, Tapman and all them. We still do stuff together from, you know, we used to camp out when we were kids, you know, in the backyard. Then Grandpa Bert Tapman, Ted's grandpa, he was a night watchman, you know, for a while. Then he had the first village squad car, 1964 Ford Galaxy. We camp out in my backyard in Mill Street. Well, he'd come through the night, stop, and we'd all jump in with him and go ride around town at night in this, you know, car. And he'd got the check doors and stuff, but we'd ride around half the night, and we'd get in about 4 o'clock and crawl back in the tent there, you know, act like we'd been there all night. And stuff like that we roared around. And, you know, in the fire department, you had so many good times back then, you know, because most of it was all paid on call back then. And, you know, you had a good brotherhood then, you know. I mean, they are now, but it's different, you know, back then. Because you weren't getting rich off that or nothing. We'd done stuff, but we saw tragedies. I mean, some of my friends, you know, died. I had a couple car accidents I went to where people I knew either got hurt bad or died. You know, and that bothers you. I know once a 2-year-old girl died in a fire. We was over to Burlington. Well, that's when my daughter was 2 years old. You know, that makes you think coming home on that. And, you know, one of the guys that died in a fire in a car accident, I used to be, you know, we were horseshoe partners before I got in the fire department. I shot horseshoe for Old Starks on, you know, Thursday nights, and he was my horseshoe partner and stuff. Because I pulled up to the thing, you know, we pulled up, and I see that license plate, you know, the car's rolling fire, and I see that license plate, and I go, I know that license plate. Because back then when everybody got gas, you had your little mobile card, and you went in, you swiped it, you had to come out with a thing, and you wrote down the license number, and they had to sign it. And, you know, I go, gosh, I know that number, you know. You get it all out, and you got to, you know, help get him out of the car and stuff. And then we had to come, his dad was at the fire station. We had to come home, you know, and tell him it was your son that was in the accident, you know. But, you know, and other people I know that, you know, had a lot of good, you've seen a lot of good happen with the fire, but there were some tragedies too, you know, that you just, there's nothing you can do, it just happened, didn't you? You know, my son got on, and he was on a few accidents, and he just says, you know, you got to figure, you didn't put him there. That was fate that got him there, you know. And you were just, you know, just some things happen, and you're just there to try to do what you can do.
Have to distance yourself and not take it personal.
Yeah, but it's hard, you know. I can still see a few things, you know, after, you know, you just don't blow it off. Some of the things you just don't blow it off. You remember it a long time.
You can't forget.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's, yeah, go to Indianapolis all the time. We got ticket stubs from 1939 1935 for my grandfather. My dad started going in 1937. He made it through 2003. 62 years because he missed a couple. Well, they were shut down during the war and stuff. But I started going in 1962 and I've made them all. 64 this year. My grandkids go, and they're fifth generation going to Indianapolis. Fourth generation sitting in the same seats.
Wow.
I got a picture, it was 1994, of my dad, myself, and my son when he was about 12. 25 years later, in 2019, I got a picture of myself, my son when he was about my age, and two of my grandsons that were 12 and 13, sitting in the same seats. It's all the time.
That's neat.
Then I went snowmobiling. We first got started snowmobiling, 70, 71. And we just snowmobile all over, and got that. And we got going north. And started going up to northern Wisconsin and stuff, and then up in the UP. But we snowmobile around here. We'd lock up the gas station on a Friday night, and 3, 4 of us, 5 of us would have the snowmobiles. And back then it'd snow all the time. You'd have snow from Thanksgiving to Easter almost. There was always snow on the ground. And most of the time you could ride out on the streets and take off and ride out in the country and whip through the fields because, like Hank Gehringer and them, we knew the farmers. We knew where we could go and where not to go. And
were you active in the White Riders Snowmobile Club?
I helped, I was one of the members, when we got it going and that. And there's still, there's 3 families left, us and Hank Gehringer and Ed Breckschneider. He was there on the first meeting and stuff. And so we still go. I haven't snowmobiled since '98 because I had back surgery and stuff, and I figured I don't want to be bopping along and all of a sudden hit a big old chuck hole. But we still go to the meetings and stuff because that's something we always did.
How long has the snowmobile club been in it, active, and when did it start? Any idea?
It started, I think it was 79, or it was after the big snows of 79, 78, 79, 79, 80 and stuff. And we started going, that's when we started, you had to ride the snowmobile to help get some people out, they're trapped in their cars and stuff. And I know some of the policemen would borrow them and we'd ride with them and they'd go out, where they had to go to check on some cars and stuff. Because back then, they had to take, it was terrible, deep snow. And you'd plow the roads and there was sometimes 10 feet banks. People were driving with their cars and they put these bicycle flags on so you'd see people coming. And there were some wrecks and stuff. I remember going out with John Finley. He was for a music teacher at Hampshire for many years, and he was delivering newspapers. And he got hit pulling out, and, got killed, tragically killed in an accident there. I remember a bit that, but it was just, you just couldn't see.
You feel there's been a climate change and there's less snow now?
Oh, there's definitely less snow, yeah. There was snow all the time. Cold. Remember starting cars, the gas station. It got 20 below zero, and the cars didn't start, the batteries were dead. So we'd have to start, we'd be all day starting cars, out in the cold and going, miserable, but it was just part of life then.
Sure.
That's what you done. It's like hauling fuel oil in them snows. You bank in the driveway, you pull that hose around through the snow banks to fill the oil tanks up. That was just part of life.
Interesting. Anything else come to mind that you'd like to add?
Oh, not. Probably after we'll go home, I'll see all that, but I'll try to remember things. If I write a few more down, I'll try to bring it up, when they have it in January or at the historical meeting. I've been on the township board too, and I was been on the board since we started senior programs up. And I'm really proud of that because we got probably for the town our size, we got one of the best senior programs there is around, I think. With all the activities going, rides to medical appointments and things for people to do. Our biggest thing is getting people to come the first time. you know, once we get them there and meet the people and stuff, but getting them, I'm not old, I'm not going down to the senior center, you know. We have a lot of fun down there. Playing bingo, it was down there today with bingo and stuff. We have dice and we have all different stuff. And we go meet, we go to lunch out, probably once a week we go someplace to eat. You know, Culver's, Wendy's, or we go pick a restaurant out and we take a ride. Some people, we have our little bus going, and some people drive themselves. But for a town this size, we got a very good program.
Now, they have quite a fleet of vehicles for hauling people now, don't they?
We got a car, a transit, and we just bought a new transit, you know, ourselves, and that. With a bus, I think it holds 13 or 14, and it's got a wheelchair lift. We use that, we lose a seat or two, but that we have cars with a ramp, but try to do as much as we can.
That's great. What are some of the trips that the township has sponsored to ball games or different?
We would, King County Cougars, we go down there. We don't go to the big ball games, you know, and all that. I used to run trips to the Brewers game and bus trips to like the White Sox games and stuff. I started that in the 80s. In the first game, I went to a White Sox game. I had the bus and everything. Box seat for the bus and for refreshments on the bus was $22 a head. Now it's $100. If I don't do it anymore because it's too much money, it's $125 a seat, and that's not the best seat around, you know. And it's tough getting going.
Yeah.
Both the township, we go. Well, they go to. This last week, they were up by Harvard to apple place where you can get apples and stuff, and they had their stores. You could apples and stuff like that. And we go to. They're going over to Milwaukee next month. Drive up and back the same day. One of the women that were always at our township, she just moved up to Milwaukee by her family, and is moving into assisted living. So the crew's going up there to stop a couple of places, but they're going to stop, pick her up, and they're all going out to lunch together and coming back. And they do a few overnighters now and then, one night and stuff. Last year they went up to Delavan for, take them up there, you go around, look at, you know, much as you can do, you get up going on what you can do in a day and that morning, and then come back that next afternoon.
That's great. My mom uses their services as well.
Yeah.
So, well, if you don't have anything else, I want to take this opportunity to thank the both of you on behalf of the Hampshire Township Historical Society. Thank you for joining us and sharing your family history and your career and your family.
Oh yeah, and it was great growing up around here, you know. A lot of friendships through the years and family memories. Yeah.
We appreciate you sharing.
Sure. Well, thank you.
Thank you. And thank you for joining us today. There will be more series and upcoming programs available on our website. Make it a great day.